Welcome back. We're in Module 3, Understanding Music Publishing. This lesson is entitled The Business of Publishing, and we've already had a little bit of a look at the business of publishing in the last two lessons, particularly how the evolution that has happened in the business of publishing over literally the last century. But with this particular lesson, what I want to do is help you see the business of publishing through the eyes of the publisher. And this goes all the way back to our very early classes when I suggested to you that you need to adopt a partner mindshare approach. And that is understanding what the business motivations are of the people that you're working with. Because very rarely in the music industry or in any business are people's motivations to make you rich or happy or successful or popular. That might be a byproduct that they're happy to do, but at the end of the day, they have their own business model and you have to be of benefit to them in their business model. So, for a music publisher, there is two core concepts that frame the way that they go about business. The first key concept is that they want to make money. And you might be thinking, well, that would be obvious. What I mean by that is they want revenue to be generated from your songs that they can collect, and then they can keep a percentage of that revenue. If your songs are not generating any revenue, their percentage is not worth very much. And it's very hard to keep your doors open when operating a business if you have no revenue. So the first key concept is that they want to derive revenue from the exploitation of your songs. The second key concept, though, is that they want to build a catalogue of income-earning songs, musical compositions. So there's two things at play. They want immediate cash flow. That's how they keep their doors open. But they also want to build up the ownership of a critical mass of IP. And the reason they want to do that is because at some point, most music publishers think that it might be a good idea to exit the business. So what they want is a body of assets, in this case copyrights, that are known and have a proven track record of generating an income over time, and they want more of them rather than less. Because maybe a bigger publisher will come along, maybe an investment bank or some other company that is looking for value in purchasing a business, and they will gravitate towards a music publisher that has a robust and successful catalogue. So it's two things, deriving revenue and building a catalogue. Now, in order to build a catalogue or derive revenue, the publisher needs one main thing. They need a bunch of songs that are capable of earning income in the short term and continuing to sustainably earn income in the long term. So what does a publisher do? Well, a publisher goes out and actively seeks songwriters to sign publishing agreements to provide that publisher with songs that are going to generate revenue and build a catalogue. Now, sadly for the publishers, they do that in a competitive environment. So they have to compete for the songs and the songwriters with other publishers who may or may not identify those same songwriters and those same songs as songs that are going to fulfill their business needs. One way of making that competition is to pay an advance. Now, I talked about this briefly in the last lesson, and I'm just going to go back over it one more time because for most songwriters, the first clause of a publishing contract they look at is the clause that tells them what their advance is. Understandable, it's money in your pocket, it's very important. But understand what the advance represents to the publisher. I know what it represents to you. It represents money in your pocket and the ability to do what you want to do with your life or as an artist, or both. Very important. But for a publisher, it's not about making your life happier. It's a speculative investment. So, They want more songs, they want better songs, and in order to do that, they need to attract songwriters. Now, a great way of attracting songwriters, as I said in the last lesson, is to say to them, we believe that in the future your songs are going to generate revenue. Hence, we want to work with you because we want a slice of that future revenue. But we're prepared to put our money where our mouth is. We're prepared to give you a percentage of what we believe is your future royalties. We're prepared to give it to you now rather than make you wait for those royalties to be earned. Now, if you're a songwriter, that's an attractive idea. But if you're a publisher, that's a risk. You're going to risk that your guesstimate, perhaps an educated guesstimate, of what that songwriter's songs are likely to generate in income over the years, you're speculating that it's correct. If you're wrong, if you pay a songwriter a $100,000 advance and their songs only generate $10,000 worth of income in the future, you don't need to be a mathematician to work out that you've lost around $90,000 on that deal. No publisher wants to lose money. So this idea of an advance is not an act of charity, it's not a reward, it's not a wage, it is purely a speculative guesstimate of the future revenue that a songwriter's catalogue is going to earn. Now, if you were a publisher, think of it this way. Would you like to acquire the rights to a catalogue of songs with less risk or with more risk? It's not a trick question. Obviously, you would like to acquire that catalogue with less risk. You would like to pay a smaller advance rather than a larger one, naturally. The songwriter says, well, I would actually rather receive a larger advance rather than a smaller one because you've all heard the expression a bird in the hand. You would like to get that money, put it in your pocket, put it in your bank account, and you would rather that amount to be more rather than less. But it's an exercise in risk minimization for the publisher. They would like to pay the smallest advance possible, and in some situations they'll say, all right, we'll pay you a small advance, but we'll give you a larger percentage of your future royalties. Instead of us taking, 30%, maybe we'll only take 20% of your future income. And the songwriter says, all right, well, I like the idea of money up front, but I also like the idea of getting an extra 10% of my future income down the track. So it's a trade-off. You are trading off your future share of income against receiving the money now. And as I said in the previous lesson, some songwriters are like, I don't need your advance. I'd rather get 90%, 95% of my future revenue in the future. I'm confident that the money isn't going to make a big difference to me now, and I would prefer to get a larger slice or keep a larger slice of my income in the future. So this concept of an advance has a lot of flow-on effects for the risk profile that any publisher is adopting. Now, as I said to you, as a songwriter, this money could be vitally important. It could be the difference between you being able to live and work full-time on your music and having to have a day job. You know, if you can get a $50,000, $100,000 advance, you probably don't need to be flipping burgers at McDonald's for the next year or so, or whatever other way that you subsidize your income. You are able to focus entirely on your work as a songwriter or your work as a recording artist or touring artist. That publishing advance could be life-changing, but we don't know that. Every songwriter is different. Some of you may be independently wealthy, and I'm very happy for you if you are. And you think, well, a $50,000 advance isn't going to make much difference to my life. You're fortunate if you're in that position. And you might say, well, I don't want that advance, and I'll take 90% of my future income rather than 80 or 75 or even 70. That's fine. That's your position. For another songwriter, it might be completely different. You might be struggling to pay your rent, and the idea of a $20,000 advance might be life-changing. It might pay off your credit card debt. It might allow you to set up a studio at home. Who knows what it might do for you? So there isn't one number that is the correct advance. It really depends on the bargaining position and the risk profile of the publisher and you, the songwriter. So this would be a really easy business, being a publisher, if there was only one of them. The publisher would simply say, all right, well, we're prepared to offer this songwriter a $20,000 advance. It's take it or leave it, otherwise they can be their own publisher. The songwriter would go, well, I'm not sure I really want to be my own publisher. It sounds a bit complicated, and 20,000 doesn't sound like a lot, but it's better than nothing, and I don't have to do any of my own administration of my copyright. Unfortunately for publishers, it is a competitive industry. So you're speculating that you need to build a catalogue. A publisher without songs is not a publisher. A publisher without songs is a shell of a business. So you need to attract songwriters. But all the other publishers are thinking the same thing. So they have to somehow make their offer appeal more to that songwriter than the next publisher's offer. That could be increasing the advance. Songwriters are naturally attracted to money in their pocket, as they should be. It's a reward for the work that they've done over their lifetime creating those songs. It's very important. But in that competitive environment, all the publishers are trying to get an edge. And they'll do that by increasing the advance, but if they increase the advance, they might think about increasing their share of future revenue. And so you have to balance out these offers, if indeed you're lucky enough to be receiving multiple publishing offers. And for the publisher, it's an exercise in risk minimization. I know I've said that a few times, but it's really important. They want to build their catalogue, get access to more songs for less cost. So if a publisher can find a songwriter that is unknown, that nobody knows that songwriter, they've discovered a songwriter by accident online or something like that, and there is no competition, this is a wonderful moment for a publisher. They've found a songwriter whose songs are going to generate income, or at least they believe they will, and there's no competition. Nobody else is aware of that songwriter. So it's in the interests of a publisher to find great songwriters that nobody else knows about. Now, the other way of identifying that you're the right publisher for that songwriter is to say we're really good at our job. We have great contacts. We are more active in film and TV and video games. We're on the cutting edge of the digital world. We're extracting every possible cent for our songwriters from their work. We do a good job as a publisher, and that's important. You can look at the advance and go, oh, that money would be kind of nice. But if you look at the publisher and go, but they don't seem to be very active. They don't seem to be able to get any of their songwriters record deals. None of their songs are being put on Netflix shows or in cool video games, or, they're offering money, but they're not offering very good publisher services. Others might say, well, we're not going to offer you a large amount of money, but look at what we're able to do as a publisher. And so you as a songwriter, you have to say, all right, am I satisfied with both the service and the deal? And how are you supposed to know that? This is probably the first time you've ever been offered a publishing deal. You don't know whether the publisher is good at what they do. You don't know if this is a good offer or not. And that's where managers and lawyers who do this kind of thing every day of the week, they know what the current environment is. What are the publishers offering? What are the competitors to that publisher offering? And how good are they in the marketplace doing what they do. So this is a very big decision with a lot of moving parts. Now, we've talked about mechanical royalties as being a big part of a publisher's income, and by definition, a big part of the songwriter's income. Now, mechanical royalties, as we know, are payable when a song is reproduced. A song is most likely to be reproduced if the artist who wrote the song is also a recording artist and they're releasing music. That will generate income. Now, you might say, well, yeah, I've got great songs, but I want to be independent. I'm happy to release my music via a digital aggregator. That's all fine. But you know that your music isn't going to generate as much income as if you were with a record company. So maybe another role for the publisher is to identify songwriters who are not signed as recording artists and help them get recording contracts. That could be a really useful role. On the other hand, if you've already got a recording contract, you're going to be way more attractive to a publisher, because they're going to say, well, at least that songwriter has a platform to release music, have that music promoted, and hopefully generate some mechanical income. So do you rely on your publisher helping you to get from the ground floor to the first level? Or do you get yourself to the first level and then go to a publisher with a much stronger bargaining position? So this is a very strategic and tactical business. For you as the songwriter, you need to know when to sign a publishing contract, if indeed you're being offered one, and you want to be doing that when you're at your greatest value as a songwriter, because you'll get a much better deal. If you're a publisher, you're trying to sign a songwriter to a smaller deal and have that songwriter blossom, become super successful without you being exposed to a great deal of risk. And so both sides to this equation are both in a competitive environment. There's lots of songwriters seeking publishing deals, and there's lots of publishers trying to acquire a catalogue of songs. The publishing industry is definitely not the enemy, but you need to understand and see the world through their eyes and understand they're trying to generate income, they're trying to build a catalogue, and they're trying to do that with the least possible risk for their own business. A lot of moving parts. So, in summary, music publishers exist to generate and collect income from the exploitation of songs. And to do that, they want more songs and they want better songs. And by better songs, we're talking about songs that are capable of generating an income. Unfortunately, they don't do that in a vacuum. They do that in competition with other publishers, and so the publisher needs to compete for those more songs and better songs. They do that in different ways. They do that by finding songs and songwriters where there is no competition, or at least the competition is weak. They do that by doing their job well, finding opportunities for songs, pitching songs successfully, and generating income, so they've got a reputation for being a good publisher to work with. And they also compete for songs and songwriters via this concept of an advance. And the advance has its own mathematical complications of trying to minimize the risk for the publisher. So it's a complex business, but it's also a really interesting business. And I hope for you as a songwriter, when that happy day arrives, when a publishing offer comes into your inbox, that you understand now what that means to the publisher as well as what it means to you. And that will help you maximize the value from your music publishing activities. All right, important class. Hope that made sense. If it didn't, please go back and read over it again. And of course, discuss this in Vampr rooms with other people doing this course. There might be other songwriters in that room that has already found themselves negotiating a publishing agreement, and this discussion might be a really valuable discussion for you to have. All right, thank you very much for listening to this one, and we'll catch you in the next lesson. Thanks a lot.